Hello everybody, today we're going to take another look at Arcade MakeCode, and this is for my students who do not have access to a computer that has downloadable software. So if you're using a Chromebook, this will work. Today we're going to just take a look at one of our other tutorials here. I'm at arcade.makecode.com, and I'm still going to go through some tutorials so that we can get the hang of this program. Slowly we're going to be working our way through these different things, like making more complicated games and maybe even doing some gaming concepts. But again, let's just keep it simple for now. This time we're going to go to Galga. So I'm going to click on arcademakecode.com, going to go down to tutorials and click on Galga. So this is going to be a game where you are in a little spaceship and you get to shoot little other spaceships flying by. So let's click on Start Tutorial. Now, for those of you who've already experimented with this, you'll notice that it's always going to give you instructions. So you're going to read your instructions. And we can take a look right now at this game is going to have the ability for us to have a game player, some enemies here, and a little life meter. So let's go ahead and go with that. And I'm just going to follow along with the directions. So this is for those students who might just need me to help you, guide you. A lot of you might be able to do this on your own. So add code to create a sprite, rename it as spaceplane and draw a plane or some kind of flying object. So we want to create a sprite, and we want to go ahead and put this in here. So this is the one right here at the top that says set my sprite. So we're going to drag this in and put it in there. And we are going to rename this variable. And we're going to call it space plane. And then in this little area here is where we're going to draw our little spaceship. So we can draw a spaceship any way we like. I'm going to go ahead and draw kind of more of like a saucer looking spaceship. So I'm going with a line across here, and then going to make a kind of thick line down the center. Remember, you can change your drawing tool size up there. And then what I'm going to do is then come in with the tool and make basically like a little stack. And then I'll change the color here. Let's say this is the top of our spaceship, and let's give it a little window here. And then let's go ahead and add a little stripe through the center. And then maybe a little fin at the back here. And that looks pretty cool to me. We might want to add more details as we need, but I think that's cool. It looks like a little fin in the back, and the front is done. Maybe I'll add a little red dot to the front. And of course, you can add so much more here, but let's just press done. Now we're going to set the space plane to stay in the screen. So again, it's always going to give you some advice here, and if you're confused, we can always click on the question little box here, the little thinking idea box here. So we did this first part correct. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get set space plane to stay in screen. So if we take a look at our options here, we're looking for the one that's going to stay in screen. And there it is, set my sprite to stay in screen. So we're going to drag this and put it under. And here, we're getting an error. Why are we getting an error? Because we have to tell the space plane to stay in the screen. So we're going to rename it here to space plane. And again, you can always check back. Everything makes sense. Yep. All we got to do now is just flip the switch to on. So that looks good. Let's go to the next step. Start the game with a few lives, so set life to 3. So if you take a look at the color here, it kind of gives you a hint as to what you're going to choose from. So I'm going to guess that this is going to be the light red, the pink option. Let's double check. Let's look at the cheating notes, and it's right. Yep, I'm going to be looking in the Info tab, and I'm going to be looking for set life to 3. So Info, set life to 3. Again, double checking my notes here. Everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and press next. Now move the space plane with the controller buttons and change the sensitivity VX and VY to 200. So let's just move this guy around. Right, it's not moving just yet, so we got to figure out what we got to do. We got to add the move option, which is also this darker red, which we can tell is the controller. These little color codes are a guide for you to know what to pick. So we're looking for move with buttons, VX. So controller move, there it is. We got to change this name here to space plane. You always got to tell it what you want to control. So you've got to remember you've got to do that there too. And what we want to do is we want to make sure it's using the right buttons. So in our little notes here, buttons VX, VY, 200. So we're going to put this 200 and 200. Oop. Cool. That looks like we've got it all done. So let's press next. Now on A button pressed, you're going to set the dart to shoot. So we're going to add an event run code, which is again the darker red. And in the event code, we're going to create a projectile sprite named dart, and that is launched from the space plane. So again, we're going to go down to, we're looking for that same dark red color, which is going to be under controller. On button A pressed. We're going to put that over here. Now you'll notice in our notes it's not attached to this other set of code. That's why it's floating over here in its own area. And then we're going to create a projectile sprite inside of there. So we're going to click on here. We're going to be looking for the projectile sprite. So it's perfect. So we're going to put that in there. If I'm running out of room, I can bring this down here so I can see a little better. So projectile sprite. We're going to change the name here to Dart. And then we're going to draw this. So let's just double check, make sure. Dart, that's right, we got to draw. And then we have to make sure that it's coming from space plane. So that's the other little thing I'm going to change here. Space plane. And then we're going to draw this thing now. So this will be the little dart, the little missile that'll be coming out of our spaceship. So let's say it'll be, how about a little blue? Give it also a little wing there. And then maybe it's got a little hint of fire in the back. And maybe another little red dot in the front there. Okay, so that's our little bomb. Maybe another little fire right there. So now that's our projectile. And we're going to set the VX to 200 and the VY to 0. Everything matches, looks great. Let's go ahead and press next. We're going to add another event to run code on game update every half second. In that event, create a sprite of kind enemy, rename it to bogey, and draw the enemy. So we're going to now draw the enemies. Now you'll notice again, you're getting the hint that it's going to be in a purple box. So we're going to start with our purple box. On game update. On game update, this is going to control the kinds of things that are going to happen throughout the game as we're playing it. And it's going to update every time the game is on. So now we're going to create a sprite. We know that sprites are in the blue. We're going to look for an enemy sprite. And we want to find the one that is sprite of kind. Let's make sure we get the correct one. So we got the purple part, set bogey to sprite of kind. So we're going to look for the one that says set sprite of kind. And we're going to rename this one to bogey. And we're going to name it, or excuse me, we're going to change the name from player to enemy, and now we can draw the enemy. So this would be, who is the bad guy? So if we got our little spaceship flying around, and yeah, maybe our enemies are, let's make something like a squid or something. So I'm going to just draw a really simple squid here with some tentacles. And a little maybe mean looking face. Kind of looks a little bit like, yeah, kind of Minecrafty, I guess, a little bit. And we'll put a little red here. How about red at the ends of the arms? And again, you draw whatever you like. I'm just making this little enemy here. And I'm just going to clean up my drawing here. I like the tentacles moving around, so that's good. That's done. That's my little enemy. And then let's keep going. On the bogey sprite, set the velocity with values to have it fly horizontally from left to right. So on the bogey sprite, again, let's take a look at our notes here. We're going to set the velocity, but that's a blue option, to Vx negative 100. So we're going to grab our sprites, velocity, and we want it to fly horizontally from left to right. So we got to fix this problem first. Bogey, because that's what we want to control. And then you can see that our bogey is flying on the screen already, which is perfect. And if we take a look at our little cheat sheet, if we want it to go left to right, we want to play with the x value, and we want to keep the y value at 0. So negative 100 and a v value of 0. And let's double check our work here. Set bogey to velocity Vx. Yep. Bogey to sprite of kind enemy. Yep, that looks good. And you can see that now the bogeys are flying left to right, our little alien creatures. Add code to set the position of the bogey to x to 180 and y to a random number between 0 and 120. So again, we're going to get a position variable, which we're looking for in the blue. We're going to get the set position. So we got the velocity, now we're setting the position. Again, we got to tell it that this is controlling the bogey, so always remember to adjust that setting there to match what it is that you're controlling. And now we're going to change the x to 180, and we're going to put the y to a random number. Now, random number, we can add a random number by including another little bit of code in here that's going to say pick random. So in this value, we're going to look for a pick random, which is going to be in our math section. We'll put that in there. And then pick random 0 to 120. And again, check your work. There's nothing wrong with checking your work. Everything's looking good so far. And I'm just going to double check my work here. I believe everything is going good. Yep, next. You use one or more event to run code when a player sprite overlaps with an enemy. So let's take a look at this. On sprite of kind, player overlaps other sprite of kind enemy. So we're looking in our blue world again. Here it is. And so obviously this is a more complicated game than the one we did last time. There's more to it. And then once again, we're going to make it so that when a player sprite overlaps with an enemy sprite. So in here, we're going to change it to player overlaps with an enemy. And so far, that's good. And we can leave that alone as it is. We're going to add the code to destroy the other sprite, which is the enemy sprite. Taking a look here, destroy other sprite. And we want to destroy the bogeys. And then when that happens, we want it to remove our life. Let me just actually go back and make sure everything is correct. Oh, let's change it to other sprite, I guess. Let me make sure I don't mess this up, everybody. On sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind. Aha, I made a little mistake there. And then this is where we would want to put in destroy other sprite. And let's just check our game right now. I think so far so good. And I think we probably just want to rename this here to other sprite. And then we're going to do a remove a life. Because when we touch the enemy, it's going to hurt our life. Change life by -1. So now if we test our little spaceship, when it touches the aliens, yep, there it is, it's dying. Okay. Put in an event to run code with a projectile sprite overlaps with an enemy sprite. On sprite kind of projectile overlaps other sprite of kind enemy. So again, we're going to bring another one of these in. And sometimes we got to give ourselves more room. There we go. And in this case, what we're going to do is we want to change it to projectile kind enemy. Yep. Add code to destroy the other sprite, the enemy sprite. Other sprite. Insert code to destroy the sprite, the projectile sprite with a fire effect. So this is going to go in there, destroy sprite with fire effect for 100 milliseconds. It's another blue one. With fire effect for fire effect for 100. And code to change the score by 1. So far so good. Now this is looking pretty good, everybody. I think one issue I seem to be having here is that it looks like our sprites our bad guys are not moving up enough and down, so, or excuse me, are not moving enough up and down. So I'm going to go back to my notes, and I might have made a mistake. This is what's great about this program is I can always go back and forth. So let's just take a look, and I'm just going to literally check all my steps, make sure I didn't do anything wrong. On start, set space plane to sprite of kind player. Yep, I did that correct. Then I'm going to set the space plane to stay in screen. Space plane, stay in screen, on. Just checking my steps. So if you have any errors, this is what you can do. Just go back. Start the game with a few lives to set life to 3. So far, so good. Now move the space plane with the controller buttons and change the sensitivity of your X and Y coordinates to 200. Move space planes with buttons. Yep. On the A button pressed, set the dart to shoot a projectile from the space plane. So on the dart to projectile from space plane with VX 200. Yep, that looks good. We can test this by pressing the letter A on our little controller. There's our little missiles being shot. Add another event to run the code on the game. Update every half second in that event. Create a sprite of kind enemy. So one thing I can do when I'm looking at all this stuff, since I have so much on my plate here, let's go down here so we can look at these notes when it opens up. On sprite, every 500 set bogey to sprite. And we're going to rename this. Do have an error there, so I'm going to type in bogey. Checking my steps. On bogey to sprite of kind enemy. Yep. On the bogey sprite, set the velocity with values to fly horizontally from left to right. Bogey, velocity, Vx is negative 100, Vy is 0. Yep. Add code to set the position of the bogey of X to 180 and Y pick random. So you see, this is where my problem was. I typed in 10 instead of 120, so probably I was just typing too fast. That's why my little monsters are not flying enough all across the screen, right? So now they are flying across the screen, and now I can shoot them as I go. And if I die, oh well. And there you go, everybody, we did it. So now we have fixed our problems. I've showed you I made a mistake, happens to all of us. I went a little bit too quickly as I was building this. And now when you're done, this is where you could download this. Now, if you have some of this hardware, this is actually something that you can actually purchase. These are basically like little computers that you can purchase, and you can actually put your games into these arcade consoles. But again, for those of us who may not have that, what we can do is we can definitely share this. So now that I've exited the tutorial, right, and I can go back to my project and I can see it at any time. So if we go back to the end of all of our steps, everybody, then we can go to the part where we can share. And this is where we would be sharing. So I could say Galga by Santos and publish this project. So you got to go through all the steps. And once you're done, this would be the code. And this code you can send to your friends. You can send anywhere. And this is also the code that you can turn in for our class. So there you go, everybody. We went through another example. You can have a lot of fun with this one. This is a shooting game, so you can create little aliens, little spaceships. But it could be anything. You could think about it another way. It could be shooting arrows at a target. It could be maybe even playing like a baseball game where you have little baseballs that you're throwing into, you know, a catcher's mitt. You can draw all kinds of stuff. So hopefully that worked for you, and if not, just go back through the notes like I did. You're bound to make a mistake here or there. This is super cool. We now got a game that we can use.